Hello, welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Dr. David Morgan. I'm glad to be here. We're up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's a sunny day today, which we haven't had that many sunny days this winter time. We're in February 2021 now, so I'm grateful for it. Actually, might get some snow this weekend, so we'll see. Don't get that much up here either. Thanks to all my viewers. I appreciate the questions you ask. I love getting your questions. And so much thanks to Onward Productions, who puts this together every week. I really, really appreciate them. If you have a question about the gospel and mental health, you can reach out to me, onward.mental.health.mondays@gmail.com. And I will do my best to answer your question. Sometimes the questions are purely mental health questions, and sometimes they're the gospel and mental health. It's totally fine either way. I'd love to get your questions and love to try to help. So let's talk about the question for today. And this is a question that I get fairly often. And the question is, are mental health issues genetic or biological? And it's kind of a loaded question, to be honest, at least as far as I perceive it, because it's extremely complicated that you can't answer that yes or no. And oftentimes what I find is when some people, not everyone, but when some people ask that question, what they're really asking is, am I responsible for my mental health issues, or is something else responsible for it? So we'll talk about that a little bit today, about just this idea of personal accountability and relative contributions of kind of genetics and environment. Some things obviously are purely genetic, your eye color or your foot size or something like that. And there's not a behavioral component to that. You can't change the color of your eyes by behaving a different way. But I think when it comes to like character, and mental health is a part of character, there's definitely a biological part to that as well. Your children that are born are very different in temperament from the very beginning. They haven't had time to learn anything from any of us down here on Earth, but yet they have different characters from the start. And so surely issues related to mood and temperament are partially biological. Are they completely biological? And no, I don't think so. I absolutely think there is an environmental or behavioral component to that. And so when someone asks, are mental health issues genetic? The answer is kind of, well, yes and no. And so again, I like to talk about the relative contributions of biology and behavior when it comes to mental health issues. And each individual mental health issue is going to have a different amount of those contributions. It may be heavier on biology, lighter on behavior, or heavier on behavior, lighter on biology. For example, in the mental health area, a diagnosis such as schizophrenia, as far as we can tell, purely biological. There's no behavioral component. You don't learn schizophrenia from your parents. And it doesn't seem like there's anything that one can do to develop genuine schizophrenia. It seems to be just a purely biological thing. Is there a genetic component to it? Probably as well. People that have schizophrenia, there's a high likelihood that their parents may have had schizophrenia and stuff like that. So again, like certain types of physical characteristics, your parents may pass them down. They can pass these sort of mental health characteristics down as well. However, let's look at another mental health issue, anxiety. Is anxiety biological? Well, a person could say, well, my mom had anxiety, or my dad had anxiety, and my grandparents had anxiety. And if maybe they find a genetic marker for anxiety, so clearly it's biological. Well, I say that, sure, probably some of it is, but I think a lot of it is also behavioral as well. And for any given individual, it can be a balance. It could be 50-50, it could be 80-20, it could be 70-30. Whatever it is, depending on the individual. And I think that those percentages can even change at some point, and we'll talk about that. We can't discount the effect of others' behavior and influence upon us. When I was preparing these remarks, I made me think of in the Book of Mormon, and the Lamanites just had this chronic hatred of the Nephites. And so you could say, man, it was just baked on in, right? It's almost a genetic thing that the Lamanites hate the Nephites because they almost hate them from birth. But if you look at Mosiah chapter 10, verse 17, it says, "And thus they, the Lamanites, have taught their children that they should hate them, the Nephites, and that they should murder them, and that they should rob and plunder them, and do all they could to destroy them. Therefore they have an eternal hatred towards the children of Nephi." So the Lamanites, from birth, being taught to hate and to rob and to plunder the Nephites, it's no wonder they turned out the way they did in some cases. Now we have examples of Lamanites who repented and became righteous, became very righteous and friends of the Nephites. So I'm just saying we can't discount the influence of other people upon us. And so if you were to say, I am this way because my parents are this way, that's probably true. But is it a biological contribution or a behavioral contribution? And like I said before, probably some of both. And I would argue that even, let's say that you had kind of a genetic predisposition to be happy most of the time, but you're raised in a very depressive environment. And for the first 20 years of your life, all you're taught is depression and doom and gloom and that nothing's going to work out. I would argue that that predisposition you have towards happiness is probably going to be overwhelmed by your environment at that point. By the same token, if someone is, let's say they're predisposed to depression, but yet they're raised in an environment where they're taught positivity and happiness and action and doing whatever they can to better their situation, I would argue that that can probably overcome some of that genetic predisposition towards depression. I just really think it's a two-way street. The brain is an amazing organ, and although it does come with factory settings, as you could say, I think that those can be changed over time. I know they can be changed over the time because the brain is constantly creating new connections and new systems based on how we think. So even if, so let's say we could absolutely lock it down and we could say, okay, your mental health condition is 70% biological, 30% environmental. Then what? Right? I mean, that's why for me, I don't spend a lot of time working on these issues, especially when working with clients, because it doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me. And I'll tell you why. For example, let's use a condition, a medical condition that we know is 100% biological, type 1 diabetes. So you can't make yourself type 1 diabetic. You can't talk yourself into it. You can't behave yourself into it. It is a biological condition. Does that mean you don't have to do anything? It's 100% not your fault that you have type 1 diabetes. Does that mean that you have nothing to do? On the contrary, if you have type 1 diabetes, you have to be vigilant. You have to watch what you eat. You have to check your blood sugar multiple times a day. You have to take medication and other things in order to keep your blood sugar regulated. So even though you have a condition that is not your fault whatsoever, you still have things that you need to do. Otherwise, that condition is going to get worse. So let's apply that to mental health, right? And even if we said, okay, your depression is 100% biological, does that mean you don't have to act? No, it means you still do something. You still do that. Now, I personally don't think that there are any depressions that are 100% biological. There may be some that are close to that, maybe 90%, but I always think that we have a part to play. There's something that we can do in order to improve that, and whatever that is. And if our action is only 10% of the solution, then fantastic. Let's do the 10%. If it's 50%, if it's 90%, then let's do that as well. One of my favorite scriptures is in when Lehi is talking to his son Jacob in 2 Nephi 2:26, and he says, "And the Messiah cometh in the fullness of time, that he may redeem the children of men from the fall. And because that they are redeemed from the fall, they have become free forever, knowing good for evil, to act for themselves and not to be acted upon." That's what I like about that. We are here to act for ourselves and not to be acted upon. Whatever condition we come with, whatever condition we inherit biologically or we learn behaviorally from other people, we have an obligation to act and to try to improve upon that. So that's why my counsel to everyone I meet is to do something every day to try to improve your situation. If it's anxiety, do something that scares you every day, even if it's just a little thing. If it's depression, then do something to try to motivate yourself, to try to be more positive every day. These small things done regularly are going to have a cumulative effect, which is going to be powerful over time. And that's our obligation to act. Even if we are in a situation that, like I said, that is 95% biological, and let's say it finally overcomes us, that we can overcome it, let's go down swinging. Let's do everything we can every day. And but I do believe that through the atonement of Jesus Christ, that there's no condition no emotional condition that's going to overwhelm us. We will prevail with his help. I really do believe that. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at LDS Psychologist, or my website at ldspsychologist.com. And always remember that change is possible, but that change requires action, and keep moving forward. Thanks, and see you next time. Bye-bye.